Every time I see more of what VHCB does, I'm more thrilled and impressed.
Vermont Housing Conservation Board is an essential partner to us.
VHCB has funded every project that we've created since the beginning.
VHCB has been a really important factor in the overall ability of dairy farming to continue in Vermont.
There's so many projects we could not have done without VHCB.
It gave us a step up in order to accomplish what we wanted to do and build the farm business the way we wanted to build it.
VHCB has been critical to funding these projects for the Nature Conservancy and many others.
The Vermont Housing Conservation Board has made it possible for a lot of people to have a life in Vermont that makes them better, but makes Vermont better.
VHCB has a mission to promote smart growth by investing in affordable housing and conserving the countryside. I'm Gus Seelig, and I'm the director of the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board, and I've been doing this since the board got started in 1987. Over the last 25 years, we've invested in hundreds of projects all over the state, and the results are that more than 10,000 families have affordable homes and apartments, and we've worked in the conservation of more than 500 farm parcels and about 140,000 acres of land. But we've also had a huge impact on the public and the visiting public in Vermont's access to the outdoors, and conserved about 250,000 acres of land. Your grandchildren are going to, I think, see the benefits of that in terms of hiking, bicycling, all over the state. We really wanted to help the organizations and communities we work with enhance what they could do, and AmeriCorps became a great way to bring lots of people, a lot of young people especially, into the work we do.
Good morning! Good morning! Thanks for coming out, y'all. This is our 15th annual service day with VHCB AmeriCorps. Nowhere else are you going to find, or rarely do you find, a convergence of so many people, a concentration of so many people who are actively committed to giving back, to contributing, to making things better, making things right in our state, in our world, in our own communities, in other people's communities.
Every time I see more of what VHCB does, I'm more thrilled and impressed with the dedication and the expansive mission. It's what we need in this country. It's what we need here in Vermont more than ever. And when you give back like you are today, you're not just helping our environment, you're not just helping our communities, you're actually giving hope to all of those who really still need you. Keep it up. We need you more now than ever. Be Vermont strong.
Access to the outdoors is an important aspect of living in Vermont. It's an important aspect of communities in Vermont. Communities that have no access to the outdoors are really missing something. That's a key piece of what Vermont is about.
You were standing on a piece of property that 100 years ago was the edge of Vermont's largest industrial wasteland. Only 100 years earlier, in 1813, the land was occupied by Barrie's first settlers. Today, we are here to celebrate the commitment we have made that the future of at least 400 acres, plus or minus, of Millstone Hill should be preserved as town forest.
This opportunity is much greater than just preserving land. It creates immense recreational opportunity for not just Barrie Town residents, but for the residents of the region, including visitors that will be here from out of state. What better way to get to know Vermont than to utilizing some of the disc golf or just some of the nature trails that exist in this town forest.
Disc golf is basically a game. It kind of plays like traditional ball golf, where you start from a tee box and you throw a frisbee instead of, hit a ball with a club.
Disc golf is a tremendous draw. The course wasn't even half done and people were here playing. And it's not disruptive to the natural aesthetics of the area.
We've laid it out so it complements the mountain bike trails and the nature trails.
I couldn't think of a better way to introduce people to a well-preserved piece of property for recreational use.
Oh, it's just a wonderful thing. There's so much history that's been here now, and just giving people a way to get out there and see it and appreciate what's been right there, and learn a little bit more about their culture, their ancestors, or what they've done.
Just the quarries are sort of the center of everything, and all the trails sort of go around, which is really cool when you're out there. You're out in the middle of the woods, and all of a sudden you come to this magnificent quarry that's sort of been reclaimed by nature. It's an amazing place. It's just pretty much my most favorite place in the world. It's beautiful.
We were lucky early on in the process to get that support through a $300,000 grant from the state's Vermont Housing and Conservation Board.
They, as mentioned, made a stretch with this property. They doubled the amount that they normally allowed to be given to town forest projects because they realized what you all know, that this is a really special place and a state resource.
As we ride the trails, as we walk with our dogs on the trails, I think about how one way to look at this place is as an industrial wasteland with compromised ecology. But that's not what I feel when I'm here. I feel that this is a spectacular, charismatic landscape, and a good natural place isn't necessarily pristine, but it's one in which we have invested and given value.
And I hope that this will not just enrich this community spiritually, but it's going to be a draw that's going to bring people to know all the great things that go on in Barre and in central Vermont. You made a loud statement that protecting this resource was really important to you, and you figured out how to do it. Not only will people be smiling today, but 100 years from now, people are going to be walking and biking here and smiling again, and that's a great gift.
It truly is a remarkable piece of history that's being preserved.
And it's just really encouraging to see the people coming out here, the parents with the young kids. The kids are out there having fun, getting exercise, and we just feel that's a really healthy thing going forward for our society.
None of those projects that we're currently working on would have been possible without VHCB being there to help us with pre-development funding. So that's a key role that they play for us in allowing us to develop housing. When you realize how important a home is to someone and how much emotionally they commit to it, being able to help them succeed as homeowners is incredibly rewarding.
It's amazing how something as simple as the space that you live in can give you so much confidence and joy in everything that you do in life.
My name is Jenny Aronin. I am a photographer and an art teacher and a children's book author. At the time that I found this house, I felt like I was at my wit's end. I just felt like I don't know what to do. Getting a grant through Twin Pines Housing Trust, I went from totally feeling like I can't buy a house, this is never gonna work, to in one day, everything changing. So it was amazing. Owning your own home is so different than anything else. The pride of that and being able to do what you want with the space. I'm grateful for Twin Pines for that, because the whole process of getting a loan as a first-time home buyer and the kind of loan that is flexible has been helpful as well. I'm always about living my dreams. So I worked really hard to try to make it work to get a home. I give thanks for this house, that I have this house, because it's such a different experience than what I grew up in, having my own home. So it really gives me such a sense of confidence.
If they get into a tight spot, there's somebody they can turn to. So that's a continuing commitment on our part, and it is made possible in large part through our partnership with VHCB.
There's so many projects we could not have done without VHCB. They come in and help you with the pre-development phase when it's really risky and you don't know if you can even do it. Then they come in first with the capital money that you're going to need for the development, and that's the seed that gets other funders in. One of VHCB's signature achievements, I think, is to have funded the creation and support of capacity of small organizations like ours all around the state. In most rural states, you won't see community development spread to so many counties and small towns and villages. So they're not just there episodically when you have a project, but they're sustaining a capacity that we just couldn't do in our small state.
There are a lot of significant buildings in Vermont, significant historic buildings in Vermont that have easements on them because of the Vermont Housing Conservation Board. That means that these buildings are protected in perpetuity. These buildings have a lot to do with identifying and establishing that sense of place, sense of community. Many of the projects are about providing community gathering places, places where folks from throughout the community can come together and connect with each other, and it's about community building in the end.
Every project is really important, but what's important beyond each project is the context in which it happens. About 2 or 3 years ago, there was a big fire at an old school that housed Montpelier Senior Center and its rec department, and it is now being redeveloped by the Montpelier Housing Authority, and it's going to provide a new home for the senior center and 12 affordable apartments. There's been a real upgrade for the whole neighborhood, for the whole community.
As we look around the rest of the country, Vermonters are doing something different that's reflected in this project today. We're cherishing our downtowns. We're acknowledging that community matters. This is a good example of how we truly add the dollars and the work and the dedication to delivering quality downtown housing.
Creating affordable housing opportunities, ensuring that there's a place for all people in our community regardless of income. Those are all values that we've shared, and I think for that reason it's been a really effective partnership over these 25 years. The co-op's board realized that the building they were in was just costing them way too much. It was sort of a 60s era, not energy efficient building, and I think they realized that they were not going to remain in business if they stayed in that building. A number of people came up to them and said, you should think about including housing above the store, and in particular affordable housing, that there was a need. It has those amazing Connecticut River views and views of Main Street, which is, I think, really, really nice. And having this opportunity to have an apartment in the downtown, which is where you can easily access shopping and services and entertainment. Probably the most innovative feature of the co-op is that we're recapturing heat from the refrigeration units in the co-op. So we'll recapture that heat and recycle it, and it will preheat the hot water in the apartments, and it will also provide space heating in the winter. This project has obviously had a huge economic impact in Brattleboro. It's estimated that there were 400 jobs created by this between $12 and $13 million project. The co-op is also estimating that they'll initially add 15 new employees, and over time, even more. We're creating housing for local workers, housing that's within what they can afford. So that's an economic impact as well. This has been a great state to do this affordable housing work, and a lot of it is the community of people that you do the work with, our colleagues around the state. It's a great group of people, and VHCB is among the best. I think they're a funder of ours, but they've always been an ally. It's the bigger picture of wanting there to be a strong housing network and land conservation network in Vermont.
One of the things that Vermont achieved before we even had the words was smart growth for Vermont. By looking at housing and conservation and historic preservation as sort of a global mission for them, we preserved the towns and villages and drove development into the villages, and then preserved key agricultural land and conservation areas. And this protected a settlement pattern that was Vermont's. And then in the 90s, around the country, people started talking about smart growth and doing exactly that.
And Vermont Housing Conservation Board, started now 25 years ago, has been an exemplary model for across the country of a program that involves housing and funding for housing, but more importantly, from our perspective, involves supporting agriculture through the purchase of conservation easements.
There have been many farmers who sold development rights as part of a plan to transfer the farm to the next generation. It's been a way to take their retirement out of the farm without developing it, and then pass it on at an affordable price.
We sold the development rights on our farm back in 1994. It allowed our farm to look forward to the next generation and to any additional cows that we wanted to have without having the cost of buying that additional land. It was really important for us to have a viable dairy operation in this rugged climate that we face with low milk prices, and to know that the land would continue in that Nelson name for maybe a 10th generation.
And a lot of landowners will tell me, they'll say, you know, it's taken that development issue off the table. And they've in some ways invested more into the property because they know they're not going to subdivide, they know they're not going to put housing on the property. They said, this is a farm.
I think once you participate in the conservation program, that your focus changes. You have no more options as far as developing, so you're trying to make your land as productive and profitable as you can.
One of the results of our program work is a real vitality in our agriculture industry, growing diversification, and growing interest in local foods across the state. But also, we hope a stronger dairy industry.
I think the farmland conservation program of VHCB is going to make sure that we do have farming in the future. I think it is a critical part to make sure we have farming in the future, and that's why I support it.
For us to put a deed restriction on a property that protects it in perpetuity, it's still an amazing thing, but we also have to make sure these properties are productive and part of the working landscape. And I think VHCB branching out into the viability program is another good example of that.
The Farm Viability Program has been a really great project in Vermont, and it's been a great tool because farms don't normally necessarily have access to business planning support, and also they don't necessarily see the value of business planning until they've had a chance to experience it.
It gave me a 1, 5, and 10-year plan. It gave me a vision. They helped me get a vision of what I wanted the farm to look like. They helped me document all that on paper, and when I approached the bank with my ideas, it made a lot more sense to them, and there was a lot more professionalism.
I didn't know anything about business planning or marketing really at the time, and they just walked us through step by step.
Whether it's a dairy farm or a vegetable farm, an alpaca farm, let's find out on paper whether it's going to succeed or not first. And then if it looks good, go for it.
The Vermont dairy industry knows it's changing, has to change. It's different than it was generations ago. The program is going to make it possible to adapt to those changes and to say that a generation from now we'll still have viable farming in Vermont.
Agriculture today in Vermont is much stronger than it is in New Hampshire and Maine, in part because we've maintained those strong agricultural communities.
A number of other states have modeled their programs after Vermont in the way that they engage local partners working with the farmers and bringing the projects to the state's attention, which is really important because then you get more community-based conservation as opposed to top-down conservation.
We have hard-working people in Vermont. We are a very special state. I feel privileged to have been born here and to live here, but we also need things, and the Vermont Housing Conservation Board has made it possible for a lot of people to have a life in Vermont that makes them better, but makes Vermont better. When you think of how the Vermont Housing Conservation Board has worked for this last quarter of a century to protect Vermont's working landscape and rural communities, to make sure that Vermonters have safe and affordable places to call home, that's what is really important. Not to do it because Vermont's going to be some kind of a theme park, but Vermont is a real place, a real communities, a real people who have real lives and have value in what they do. We're not trying to freeze Vermont into one place, but we're trying to make the Vermont that we know and love and have grown up with a vibrant, viable, always changing Vermont that it's there for the next generation. We're able to show the rest of the country we can do it in our little state. You can do it, and you can make life better for your people. We're protecting the future for our children and our grandchildren, and you can't do anything better than that as a people.